I think what's important to say that the examination of culture and creative industry is a new development. It is maybe 10, 15 years old. It started in Britain and it's now expanding. In particular, the matter has been looked at mostly in Northern Europe with a view to consider culture in a wider remit and move away from the traditional conception that culture is only about supporting cultural institutions, but that culture is also can support entrepreneurship, can support economic development, can support education, knowledge, can support objective of sustainability. So it's still a process in development. And what I found very interesting, first in the European context, is that we can use different experiences that have taken place in different countries and probably pick and choose what has been working in those countries and what can be useful and what the other countries or the regions, cities can learn from the others. The second observation, what I find interesting, is that Europe is not very conscious of those cultural assets. And now there is an increased demand from third countries, like China, Brazil, India, to engage with Europe, because those countries envy Europe for its cultural resources, its diversity, its ability to nurture creativity among individuals, among people, its ability to manage culture, to manage cultural institutions, to preserve the heritage, to make cultural and creative people to work with the ICT industry or for tourism. And very often Europe is incapable of responding to this demand from China, from India, from Brazil, because it is not even aware of those resources and its assets. We have probably among the best musicians, the best cinematographers, the best designers, the best architects in the world. And we have to give the opportunity of those people to also engage with the rest of the world and make known to the rest of the world of the excellence that exists in Europe. And I think this is probably something Europe needs to understand. If not, it will continue to simply sell its cars or its pharmaceuticals, its chemicals, and forget about what is also an incredible assets that exist here in the world. Also the addition being here in Košice, I think what is important is that there is such amount of diversity of cultural expression, creativity, that we also are in a position to show to the world that diversity is not a constraint, but it's actually a help nurturing creativity. And this also is important for countries with different nationalities, with different minorities, to explain how diversity is supportive of creativity. The issue is about measuring success of the cultural investment. And we have a tradition in the cultural sector not to measure success. Culture is an investment and it produces results. And there's never been a strong request from decision makers to justify the investment. But now, because of the crisis, we have to justify the cultural investment and show the success it can bring. So we were fortunate in 2006 to do a report for the European Commission on the economy of culture in Europe. And this study actually showed the importance of the cultural investment. It showed that in Europe, 6 million people are employed in the cultural sector, that the cultural sector represents 3% of Europe's GDP. So it's more than ICT manufacturing. It's more employment than in the car manufacturing industry. And this came as a kind of revelation to politicians, which were in a position to apprehend what it meant to invest in culture and creative industries. And you can now visit different places and see how this investment is being used by cities to reconsider urban planification, provide young entrepreneurs that want to develop creative skills, the ability to develop their own enterprise and therefore create jobs, employment. And the ability of cities to brand themselves and develop a new image. Berlin is probably the best example of a city that has used creative industries to brand itself as creative, innovative, attracting people from throughout the world. It's interesting because Berlin, there was no traditional industries. You have also other cities that have a long industrial past tradition, or industries who've moved away from their cities because of ability to set themselves up in Southeast Asia. So cities faced with delocalization and which have used culture and creative industries to recreate life in the city centers. Nantes in France is a perfect example. Nantes has developed into a city of destination in France out of investment into culture. In Estonia, Estonia has developed a whole policy around culture and creative industries with a lot of support actually from the structural fund from the European Union. And Estonia has been successful in a city like Tartu, for instance, in incubating young entrepreneurs. And I could multiply examples throughout Europe of successful initiatives. It's too early to say and to measure the impact of this initiative because those initiatives are young, they are maybe 5-6 years old. But what is necessary is for the sector to develop indicators and measurement tools in order to give confidence to politicians that they are right to take the risk of investing into culture and creative industries. Another point I want to say is that very often politicians see innovations, but only from a point of view of technological innovation. So spending is done to develop research and development funding, but only from a technological point of view. And there are other forms of innovation that stem from creativity, from creative skills in communication, in branding, in product development, in design. And we need to make our politicians aware that innovation is not only about technological innovation, but it's also about those other forms of innovation.